Behind the steamed-up windows of every British caff, a formica counter once held the humblest feast in the land. Before cling-filmed triangles and petrol station meal deals, the sandwich was a working man's fuel, cut thick from a doorstep loaf and filled with whatever a few pennies could buy. From fish paste scraped to the last smear, to dripping, still tasting of Sunday's roast, these were the fillings that carried Britain through cold mornings and long shifts. Some would turn your stomach today. Others you would pay good money to taste again. We are counting down 30 forgotten lunch counter sandwiches from the 1950s that every British caff once served. Let us begin with number 30. Number 30, the fish paste sandwich was the caff's cheapest promise. A smear of anchovy or salmon paste spread thin across margarined bread. Behind the counter sat little jars of shippums, their contents dark and salty, scooped out with the tip of a knife and stretched to cover a doorstep slice. In 1953, a jar cost around 8p and lasted a working week. The flavor was strong, almost fishy sweet, and clung to the roof of the mouth long after the last bite. Lorry drivers ate them wrapped in greaseproof, washed down with stewed tea from a thick white mug. Nobody called it luxury. It was fuel, plain and cheap. Today, the paste jar has vanished from the counter, remembered only by those who grew up licking the knife. Number 29. The sugar sandwich was the treat that cost almost nothing, a childhood bribe folded into buttered bread. Caff owners knew a hungry youngster could be quieted with a thick slice, spread with margarine and scattered with a spoonful of granulated sugar that crunched between the teeth. With sweets still rationed until 1953, this was how many children got their fix, the sugar catching the light like frost on the bread. Mothers pressed the slices together and cut them into triangles, watching small fingers grab for the sweetest corner. A bag of sugar cost a few pence and made a dozen. It was thrift dressed up as pudding. Dentists would faint at the sight of it now, but for a generation it was the taste of being spoiled on a shoestring. Number 28. The banana sandwich brought a rare flash of the exotic to grey post-war counters. Bananas had all but disappeared during the war, and their return in the early 1950s felt like a small miracle to children who had never tasted one. Caffs mashed the fruit with a fork, sometimes with a whisper of sugar, and spread it thick on white bread that turned soft and sweet against the filling. A single banana cost around 4p, dear enough to make the sandwich feel like a Sunday indulgence. The smell was heady and tropical in a country still smelling of coal smoke and boiled cabbage. Children savored every bite, knowing another might not come for weeks. Today, the banana butty survives only in nursery kitchens, a faint echo of post-war wonder. Number 27. The sardine sandwich carried the sharp tang of the tin straight onto the plate. Caffs kept flat tins of sardines in oil or tomato sauce stacked behind the counter, prized open and mashed bones and all onto buttered bread. A tin cost around 7p and fed 2 hungry men, the oily fish rich enough to line a stomach for the afternoon. The smell was unmistakable, drifting across the room and clinging to coats long after. Some liked a squeeze of vinegar or a crack of pepper to cut the oil. Dockers and market porters swore by them for the strength they gave. Yet as fresh fish counters and fancier fillings arrived, the humble sardine slipped away, remembered now as the sandwich that announced itself before you saw it. Number 26. The piccalilli and cheese sandwich matched sharp against mild in a way that woke the mouth. A caff would slice a wedge of crumbly cheddar, lay it on buttered bread, then spoon over a bright yellow mound of piccalilli, the mustard pickle studded with cauliflower and pickled onion. The color alone made it stand out among the pale fillings of the day. A jar cost around a shilling and lasted a month behind the counter. The vinegar bite cut clean through the fat of the cheese, waking a tired palate at the tail end of a long shift. Workmen ate them standing, one hand on the mug, the other on the sandwich. Piccalilli lingers on shelves today, but the sharp cheese sandwich that made it famous has quietly faded from Caff menus. Number 25. The bloater paste sandwich delivered a smoky, salty punch that few modern mouths would tolerate. Bloaters, whole herring cured in brine and lightly smoked, were pounded into a dark paste and potted in little jars kept beside the sardines. Spread thin on margarined bread, the flavor was intense, fishy, and smoky at once, a taste born in the herring ports of the East Coast. A jar cost around 9 pence and went a long way, a smear being all any stomach could take. Older men favored it, remembering leaner years when a herring fed a family. The younger ones wrinkled their noses. As tastes softened and milder fillings took hold, bloater paste retreated to a handful of coastal shops, its fierce flavor too strong for the changing British palate. Number 24. The condensed milk sandwich was pure sweet indulgence squeezed from a tin. Caffs and home kitchens alike kept a tin of sweetened condensed milk, punched with 2 holes and drizzled thick and golden onto buttered bread. The milk oozed slow as treacle, catching on the fingers and the chin. A tin cost around 10 pence and could sweeten a week of sandwiches or puddings. For children with a sweet tooth and rationed sweets, this was heaven folded in half. The bread went soft and sticky, the filling almost caramel against the tongue. Mothers made them for birthdays and treats, watching small faces light up. Today, the tin sits mostly in baking cupboards, and the sandwich that once thrilled a sugar-starved generation has all but disappeared. Number 23. The beetroot sandwich stained the bread a shocking purple and left fingers dyed for hours. Caffs kept jars of beetroot pickled in vinegar, sliced thin and layered onto buttered bread with a shake of salt. The color bled straight into the crumb, turning a plain sandwich into something vivid and strange. A jar cost around 8 pence and brightened many a dull plate. The taste was earthy and sharp, the vinegar cutting through the sweetness of the root. Some added a slice of cheese or a smear of salad cream to balance it. It was the taste of allotment gardens and Sunday tea, cheap and cheerful and unmistakably British. The beetroot butty survives here and there, but the Caff counter that once served it has largely fallen silent. Number 22. The mock crab sandwich fooled the eye and the tongue with cheese and tomato dressed up as luxury. When real crab was far beyond the reach of a working purse, Caffs blended grated cheese, tomato, a little margarine and a dash of salad cream into a pinkish paste that passed for the real thing. Spread on white bread, it looked convincingly like potted crab at a fraction of the cost. A helping came together for a few pence from odds and ends. The flavor was tangy and rich, the sort of trick that made ordinary ingredients feel special. Housewives passed the recipe between them like a secret. It was making do turned into cleverness. Mock crab faded as real seafood grew affordable, remembered now as the sandwich that punched above its price. Number 21. The salad cream sandwich turned a single condiment into a meal all its own. When there was nothing else in the larder, a calf or a mother would spread margarined bread thick with Heinz salad cream, its sharp, tangy sweetness enough to lift plain bread into something worth eating. A bottle cost around $1 and outlasted the month. The pale yellow dressing pooled at the edges, vinegary and creamy at once, a flavor every British child of the era knew by heart. Sometimes a limp lettuce leaf joined it, sometimes nothing at all. It was the emptiest cupboard's answer to hunger. Salad cream still sits in fridge doors today, but the sandwich made of nothing but bread and dressing has slipped from memory, a quiet casualty of plenty. Number 20. The tomato sandwich celebrated the glut of summer when allotments and greenhouses overflowed. Caff sliced ripe tomatoes thick, laid them on buttered bread, and finished with a generous shake of salt and pepper that drew the juices out. The bread soaked up the pink liquid until it turned soft and almost sweet. A pound of tomatoes cost around 9p in season, cheap enough to fill a counter through August. The taste was fresh and simple, a burst of sunshine between two slices. Workmen ate them, dripping over the newspaper, catching the juice before it ran to the wrist. It was the flavor of a British summer, brief and generous. As year-round produce flattened the seasons, the ripe tomato sandwich lost its magic and quietly slipped away. Number 19, the Marmite sandwich divided the counter as sharply as it divided the nation. A scrape of the dark, glossy yeast extract on buttered bread was all it took, the flavor so intense that a thin smear was plenty. A jar cost around a shilling and lasted an age, a single spoonful enough for a whole loaf. Some spread it thick and reveled in the salty, savory hit. Others recoiled at the first sniff. Rich in the B vitamins that mattered in leaner years, it was pressed on children as much for health as for taste. TAFs kept a jar by the toaster for those who knew what they wanted. Marmite endures on shelves today, but the Caff sandwich built around it has faded, its love it or hate it verdict now the stuff of legend. Number 18, the shrimp paste sandwich brought the taste of the coast inland in a little potted jar. Caffs kept tubs of potted shrimp paste, the tiny brown shrimp bound in spiced butter, spread thin across bread for a filling that felt faintly grand. A pot cost around a shilling, dear enough that it graced a Sunday tea more often than a weekday counter. The flavor was rich and buttery, warmed through with mace and nutmeg, the shrimps small enough to melt on the tongue. Seaside towns served it with pride, and travelers brought jars home as a treat. It was elegance a working family could just about afford. As frozen prawns and imported seafood took over, the potted shrimp paste sandwich retreated to a handful of coastal caffs and long memories. Number 17, the liver sausage sandwich packed a soft, rich filling that stretched a few pennies into real sustenance. Caffs sliced the smooth, spreadable sausage onto buttered bread, its pinkish paste dense with the flavor of pig's liver and onion. A quarter pound cost around 5p at the butcher, cheap enough to feed a family through the week. The texture was almost like pate, spreading easily and clinging to the bread. Some added a smear of mustard or a slice of pickled onion to lift it. It was the sort of filling that sat heavy and satisfying through a cold afternoon. Children ate it without complaint, adults with quiet appreciation. As offal fell from favor and butchers closed their doors, liver sausage slid off the counter, a forgotten workhorse of the post-war sandwich. Number 16, the cucumber sandwich crept down from the drawing room to the humble Caff, stripped of its finery. Where the gentry cut crusts and served wafer-thin slices with afternoon tea, the Caff kept it plain, thick cucumber on buttered bread with a shake of salt to draw the water. A cucumber cost around 6p in season, a small luxury for a place used to paste and dripping. The taste was cool and clean, a refreshing break from heavier fillings on a warm day. Typists and shopgirls favored them, dainty enough to eat at a counter without mess. It carried a whiff of gentility into working streets. As lunch habits changed and the Caff gave way to the sandwich bar, the modest cucumber sandwich lost its place among the fillings of the day. Number 15, the EGG and cress sandwich was the Caff's tidy little classic, boiled and mashed into comfort. Caff's hard-boiled eggs by the dozen, mashed them with salad cream or margarine and salt, then piled the pale yellow filling onto bread with a tuft of peppery mustard cress. A half-dozen eggs cost around a shilling and made a counter's worth. The smell was unmistakable, sulphurous and homely at once, filling the room the moment the jar came out. The cress added a fresh green bite that cut the richness of the egg. It was gentle, filling and universally liked, the safe choice on any counter. Egg and cress lingers on in shop chillers today, but the freshly mashed Caff version, warm from the pan, has quietly faded away. Number 14. The ham and peas pudding. Stotty was the pride of the Northeast, a sandwich as regional as the accent. Bakers in Tyneside split a stotty cake, that flat, dense round of bread with a dimple in the middle, and packed it with boiled ham and a thick spread of yellow peas pudding. The split peas, mashed smooth with butter and pepper, turned the sandwich into a meal that could fell a hungry ship worker. A stotty cost a few pence and the filling little more, feeding a family for next to nothing. The bread was chewy, the pudding earthy, the ham salty and pink. It was the taste of Newcastle, sold hot from covered markets. As supermarkets flattened regional tastes, the ham and peas pudding stotty retreated to a stubborn few northern shops. Number 13. The haslet sandwich carried the savory pride of the Lincolnshire butcher between two slices. Haslet, a loaf of seasoned pork offal bound with breadcrumbs and sage, was sliced cold and laid thick on buttered bread with a smear of mustard. A quarter-pound cost under 9pence, cheap enough for the tightest budget yet flavoured richly with herbs. The meat was dense and peppery, the sage lifting it above the ordinary. Butchers guarded their own blends, and every town swore its version best. Children raced to claim the darker, crustier end slice, the most intensely seasoned of all. It was thrift turned into flavour. Yet Haslet could not travel far or keep for long, and as independent butchers vanished, the Haslet sandwich became a ghost of the East Midlands tea table. Number 12. The tongue sandwich was the cold cut that demanded both nerve and skill to prepare. Butchers pressed ox tongue in its own jelly, and Caffs sliced it thin onto buttered bread with a smear of English mustard. The meat was tender and rich. Unlike anything else on the counter, its flavour deep and beefy. A few slices cost around a shilling, a modest treat that looked far grander than its price. Children eyed the strange grey-pink meat with suspicion, but adults ate with relish. It was a fixture of the cold Sunday supper and the Caff that catered to older tastes. As offal fell from fashion and pressed meats vanished from butcher counters, the tongue sandwich faded fast, remembered now only by those who once braved that first curious bite. Number 11. The brawn sandwich made a virtue of every last scrap the pig could offer. Brawn, the shredded meat from a boiled pig's head set firm in its own jelly, was sliced cold and laid on bread with mustard or a splash of vinegar. A wedge cost just a few pence, cheap enough to anchor the leanest week. The taste was rich and porky, the jelly wobbling on the knife, the appearance enough to unsettle anyone not raised on post-war thrift. Older men ate it with quiet satisfaction, remembering when nothing was ever wasted. Children more often fled the kitchen. It was making do at its most unflinching. As butchers closed and squeamish modern tastes took hold, the brawn sandwich slipped away, a stark relic of a hungrier Britain. Number 10. The black pudding sandwich fried up dark and rich for the KAF breakfast trade. Slices of blood sausage, studded with white cubes of fat, were fried until the edges crisped, then tucked hot into a buttered bread roll. In Lancashire and Yorkshire, it was a source of fierce local pride, sold by the link from every pork butcher. A few slices cost pennies. Filling and hearty enough to fuel a morning's labour. The smell of it frying drifted out onto the pavement, pulling workers in from the cold. It was earthy, savoury, and deeply satisfying, the sort of breakfast that meant business. Black pudding enjoys a fashionable revival on restaurant plates today, But the everyday Caff sandwich that once anchored northern mornings has largely disappeared. Number 9. The luncheon meat sandwich was the tinned wonder that stretched across post-war Britain. Chopped pork pressed into a block and turned out of the tin in a wobbling pink slab, luncheon meat was sliced thick and slapped onto buttered bread, sometimes with a smear of pickle. A tin cost around $1 and fed a family, the meat mild and salty and endlessly convenient. It kept for months in the cupboard, insurance against a bare larder. Caffs fried the slices for warmth or served them cold for speed. Children ate it without fuss, and mothers were grateful for the ease. It was modern and cheap and reliable. As fresh meat grew affordable and tastes moved on, the tinned luncheon meat sandwich faded from the counter, a relic of leaner, more careful years. Number 8. The Spam sandwich was the American gift that outstayed the war and became a British staple. Spiced ham from the tin, salty and pink, was sliced and laid on buttered bread, or fried into fritters and tucked warm between 2 slices. A tin cost around 1 3d, a dependable standby when meat was dear. The flavor was rich and salty, the fat glistening on the knife. It had fed the nation through the war and lingered long after, a taste woven into a whole generation's memory. Caffs kept tins stacked high for a filling that never let them down. Yet as prosperity returned and fresh cuts filled the shops, Spam slid from favor, mocked more than eaten, its wartime heroism forgotten, and its sandwich left behind. Number 7. The salmon paste sandwich brought a touch of the sea to counters far from the coast. Tinned salmon, mashed with a little vinegar and margarine, was spread on bread for a filling that felt like a small celebration. A tin of red salmon cost around 1 6d, dear enough to be saved for Sunday tea and high days. The pink flesh was rich and oily, the bones softened and mashed right in for goodness. Housewives kept a tin at the back of the cupboard for visitors, proof that the family could put on a decent spread. It shimmered on the plate, a cut above the everyday paste. As fresh fish and fancy fillings arrived, the tinned salmon sandwich lost its shine, remembered now as the modest luxury of the post-war tea table. Number 6. The cheese and pickle sandwich paired crumbly cheddar with the dark tang of Branston in a match made in every Caff. A thick slice of cheese sat on buttered bread, crowned with a generous spoon of chunky pickle, its vegetables and vinegar cutting clean through the fat. A jar of pickle cost around $1 and lasted the month behind the counter. The taste was sharp and sweet and savory all at once. The sort of sandwich that satisfied without ever growing dull. Workmen ordered it by the dozen, a reliable anchor of the lunchtime trade. It was the great British sandwich in its everyday form. Cheese and pickle survives in shop chillers today, but the freshly cut Caff version, thick and generous, has quietly slipped from view. Number 5. The crisp sandwich turned a bag of Smiths into an unlikely counter favorite. Caffs and children alike buttered 2 slices of white bread, tipped in a bag of ready salted crisps, and pressed them together until they crunched. A bag cost around 3d, and with the little twist of blue salt paper shaken over, the sandwich delivered a satisfying crackle in every bite. The bread went soft while the crisps stayed sharp, a contrast that delighted young mouths. Some used cheese and onion, some salt and vinegar, each swearing by their own. It was cheap, quick, and gloriously silly. Grown-ups called it nonsense, but children knew better. The crisp butty survives in kitchens still, though the Caff that once served it across a Formica counter has mostly gone. Number 4. The corned beef sandwich relied on the tin shipped in from Argentina to fill a nation's bellies. Caffs prized open the distinctive blue-labeled tins, sliced the dense pink meat thick, and laid it on buttered bread, often with a smear of pickle or a slice of tomato. A tin cost around 1 and 3p and fed several, its salty, fatty richness enough to line a stomach for the afternoon. Up to 200,000 tons arrived on British docks each year in the early 1950s, filling the gap left by rationing. The meat crumbled slightly under the knife, salty and satisfying. Workmen swore by it for the strength it gave. As fresh meat and freezers became the norm, the corned beef sandwich slipped quietly from the Caff counter it once ruled. Number 3. The chip butty was the Caff's most gloriously indulgent creation. Carbohydrate wrapped in carbohydrate. Hot chips, golden from the fryer and doused in salt and malt vinegar, were piled onto thickly buttered white bread and pressed down until the butter melted through. A bag of chips cost around 4p, and with a couple of slices from a doorstep loaf, a filling meal came together for pennies. The bread soaked up the vinegar and grease, the chips soft and fluffy inside their crisp shells. It was the taste of Friday nights and works canteens, cheap and unashamedly hearty. Children begged for them, adults ate them without apology. The chip butty clings on in northern chippies still, but the Caff that once served it hot across the counter has largely vanished. Number 2. The bacon butty was the smell that pulled every worker off the pavement and through the Caff door. Rashers of streaky or back bacon were fried until the fat crisped, then tucked hot into a buttered bread roll or between 2 thick slices, finished with a squeeze of red or brown sauce. A couple of rashers cost around 6p, an affordable start to a hard day's labor. The smell of frying bacon drifting onto the cold morning street was advertisement enough. The bread soaked up the fat, the sauce cut through the salt, and the whole thing steamed in the hand. It was, and remains, the sandwich Britain loves most. Yet the true transport Caff that made it famous, all steamed windows and tea urns, has faded into memory. And finally, in first place, the beef-dripping sandwich crowned the Caff counter as the ultimate expression of post-war thrift and flavor. Every drop of fat rendered from the Sunday roast was saved, cooled, and spread thick on a doorstep slice, the brown jelly at the bottom of the pot praised above all for its concentrated taste of meat. A pot of dripping cost next to nothing, scraped together from what would otherwise be thrown away. Spread on bread with a pinch of salt, it carried the faint memory of roast beef long after the joint was gone. Workmen ate it wrapped in greaseproof, savoring the rich, savory coating on the tongue. The smell of it took a whole generation straight back to their mother's kitchen. It was survival made delicious, thrift you could taste. Today, cardiologists shudder, and the dripping pot has all but vanished from the counter. But for those who grew up on it, no modern filling has ever come close to that first salty, beefy bite. Across all 30 entries, from the humble fish paste that opened our list to the mighty beef dripping at the very top, these forgotten sandwiches tell the story of a Britain that fed itself on ingenuity and made a feast of almost nothing. Some, like brawn and bloater paste, would shock a modern mouth. Others, like the bacon butty and the chip butty, we still cling to today. But the steamed-up Caff that served them all, with its formica counters, its tea urns, and its grease-proof wrappers, has largely fallen silent. Which of these would you still eat today? And which did your own family swear by? Tell me in the comments. Your Nan knew. Now you know too.